Hi guys, so I'm back with another crime and mystery story. Now what I've decided to do, because those of you who do follow me know that I like to psychically look into cases, crimes and mystery. However, I am also aware that not everybody knows about certain crime stories, and I know that a lot of people kind of are quite fascinated about certain stories that have happened that they may not know about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my crime and mystery in two parts. So part one is going to be the actual background or the basis of the story, all the evidence that we all kind of know about. And then part two is going to be where I psychically look into the case and see what I can pick up. So today I'm going to talk to you about Suzie Lamplugh. She was a 25-year-old estate agent from London. Now, Suzie went missing on the 28th of July 1986, and she was then declared dead 8 years later, although her body has never been found. So on the 28th of July, Suzie went to work as normal. She got to the office and around 12:40 p.m, Suzie actually left the office to go and show a potential client around a home. Now, Suzie took her keys with her purse with her, but she actually left her handbag at the office. So there's been a lot of speculation that she obviously had intentions of going back to work that day. Now, Suzie's office department did actually have details that she was attending an appointment, but obviously back then it wasn't as technical as it is these days. So her appointment was actually written on paper. Now, although there was no details of this particular person that she was meant to be meeting, no phone numbers, no address or anything like that, there was actually details of her meeting a client who was meant to be called Mr. Kipper. Now, apparently there was quite a few witnesses that had seen Suzie outside this property with a guy who we can only assume was Mr. Kipper, and witnesses have described him as being quite immaculate, very well dressed, and actually a very good looking person. Now, there was another sighting apparently of Suzie and this young guy, who again we can only assume was Mr. Kipper, outside a property, and there were reports of them kind of arguing and kind of then getting in a car which was described to be Suzie's car. There were also reports as well of certain members of the public seeing Suzie in a park sharing a bottle of champagne with a young guy who again was immaculately dressed. Now, when Suzie hadn't returned to work, this actually brought a lot of concern in terms of her colleagues and her manager. So her manager actually contacted Suzie's mum to ask if she had heard from her or seen her or had any information, because obviously she hadn't returned back to work. Now, this obviously really alarmed Suzie's mum and also colleagues and her management, because this again was something that was out of character for Suzie. So after trying to locate her again and find out where she was, her manager did actually ring the police, and 6 hours later she was reported missing. Now, later that evening, Suzie's car was found and the driver's door was unlocked, the handbrake was off, and Suzie's keys were missing. However, her purse was actually found in the glove compartment. And what was interesting as well is the driver's seat had been moved back, so it would have been in a position that Suzie would not have driven in. So this is what leads people to believe that maybe somebody else was in fact driving her car. Now, the story of Suzie Lamplugh was literally a huge story back then. I mean, it was one of the biggest stories that were covered in terms of a missing person. And the case was actually reopened in 1998, which then again led lots of new witnesses to come forward. Now, one witness did come forward and say that she saw a man and a woman struggling in a black BMW, and this was actually noticed where Suzie's car was found. Now, 3 weeks after the disappearance of Suzie Lamplugh, a shop assistant or a couple of shop assistants actually notified the police of a man that was trying to assault them, and this man was called John Cannon. He was actually arrested because of this. Now, when they did locate John Cannon, they found out that he in fact had a black BMW, and when they looked in his BMW, they actually found rope and an imitation handgun. Now, John Cannon was also arrested for the murder of Shirley Banks, which was another lady. That's another story, but he actually was arrested for that, and he was also previously arrested for a rape as well. Now, after gathering all of the information from the witnesses and descriptions and things like that, this guy, John Cannon, very much matches the description of what we all assume Mr. Kipper to be. So he has always been the number one suspect in the disappearance of Suzie Lamplugh. Now, unfortunately, there's been no hard evidence that has linked John Cannon to the disappearance of Suzie Lamplugh. However, John has often said to his prison mates and other people that he actually did kill Suzie and that he did bury her body, and then suddenly he takes back what he said. So it's a case of didn't he? Is he just doing it to get a reaction, or is he actually disclosing some information? Now, what is quite interesting is previous to all of this happening, Suzie actually was dating this guy, and she said that she was dating him for a little while, but she kind of had weird vibes from him, and that there was times where he suddenly would disappear from dates or have to leave their dates early, and he just had like weird things about him, and she just didn't have a very, very good feeling, and she actually disclosed this information and things like that. But when her parents actually told the police this, they kind of didn't really listen. So there was a lot of mistakes in the whole of this case that the police actually did make. Now, what is quite interesting is John Cannon actually, with all his previous convictions, he actually had a tag. So there were certain curfews that he had to abide by. So this is again what links the story with Suzie and John, because everybody kind of believes that this weird guy that she was potentially dating, who kept disappearing from dates and leaving their dates early, might actually be John because he had a curfew. And what is even more interesting is that he's actually known in prison as Kipper. Now, I guess the most frustrating part of this case is there seems to be so many dots in this case that should technically, you would think, would be connected quite easily. But again, as I said, unfortunately, there was absolutely no hard evidence to link John to the disappearance of Suzie. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to psychically look into this case, and I'm literally just going to see what I can pick up on. Was it John? Was John Mr. Kipper? Was Mr. Kipper someone else? Or has something completely different happened to Suzie? So if you'd like to find out what my psychic intuition is on this story, then please follow me for part 2.